welcome to another episode of Properly Freelance. I'm Jenni Elborn, and today I'm talking to Rachael Palmer, who I know a little bit about already, but not that much. Rachael you have a company called Black Maven, is that right?
I do. I own a company called Black Maven, which is, in essence, just to make things really simple, I tell people it's a business consultancy working with small entrepreneurs and Black-owned businesses.
Okay.
And that's essentially, that's who I target. And it's to basically help them to grow. So it's about growth and getting them from wherever they are, point A, to wherever they're not end destination, but the next destination where they want to be. So it's all about taking small steps to get to your bigger goal.
So that's your company,
Yes.
but I mean, really, is it just you really?
It's
or is
really, no, it's just me.
Because there's this thing, isn't there? We've got a company name and all of
Yes.
them. And sometimes I find I write in emails, I use the word we, and then I'm like, I don't know who I'm talking about. It's just me.
I do have associates that I work with, but my company is just me. So, for example, if I'm working with a client and their one of their goals is around their branding and their marketing, like I have an associate who we work together, so I can kind of refer them on and do a joint project.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just me. Freelance life.
Yeah, freelance life indeed. How long have you been freelance, and how long have you been running the company for?
Okay, so I actually started being a freelancer when I started Black Maven. So that was the beginning of 2007. 2017.
Fairly recently.
Yeah. So 2 years ago, and that was because I realised that I liked doing certain things and other people were getting paid to do the things that I liked doing. So I thought, maybe I can get paid for it.
Yeah.
And to kind of remove that barrier that no one's going to pay you. And it was kind of as soon as I had made the decision that, yes, I'm really going to focus on this for the coming year, I actually got my first client.
So had you always been kind of in a payroll job?
Yeah. Up until that point.
So you took a leap?
I did. The role that I was in finished. Well, it didn't finish. I quit.
Yeah.
When did I quit? No, I was actually doing it whilst. So, okay, let's get this right. I started the role in September 2016. I did it for 6 months until March 2017, but in January I started Black Maven.
So you had an overlap?
Yeah, I had an overlap, and then it got to the point where I was dreading getting on the bus because I didn't want to go in because I wanted to work on my business, and there were so many things I wanted to do, and it just got to the point I was like, why am I doing this? I may as well just stop what I'm doing, working for somebody else, and start working for myself. And literally, as soon as I did that, that's when the first client came.
Brilliant. Had that toe in the water.
Yes, literally. So
yeah,
I work with a whole different, through cross industries, from like caterers to public speakers to, gosh, you name it, I probably worked with them.
So there might even be people who are kind of freelancers or running their own small businesses.
Yeah, exactly.
Who might even be interested in
kind
of linking up with you. So we'll get some links and stuff put out there for them. One of the questions that I've been asking quite a lot of my guests when we get to this point is, okay, but how do you make money from that? And that's kind of going to lead into what we were going to talk about today, which is about how to price your services and when how to work out how you're actually going to make a living from it. Is it a case of you're sort of only able to work with clients who have got a certain amount of money, they can afford a consultancy type service?
Well, I work with startups, so we're very aware that I'm pitching myself and my services to those who don't have much money, basically. And I think that's I have that mindset because part of the reason why I started and chose to do this is because it's not all about the money for me. It really is about seeing people succeed and grow and do the things that they want to do. So that's why it's going to sound really bad when you're working for yourself. So money isn't a big motivator for me. Obviously, it's very important, but that wasn't my main reason for starting. So how do I get paid? So basically, it's more on a project basis. So there's certain even goals that within a contract that I might have, I say, you know, once I've completed A, B, and C, then this amount needs to be paid, and then when I've done D, E, and F, then that amount needs to be paid. So I try and stagger it, and I try and be as kind of fair as possible.
And if you're working with quite small companies and startups who are maybe relying on the fact that they're going to grow and start making profit and stuff, does that ever trip you up in the sense of like they haven't got the money to pay you?
It's happened once, and I've been burned once with that, and the excuse that they gave didn't match up to what they had said, and I kind of just put it down to experience. I was quite upset actually, because I feel like you kind of built a kind of rapport and relationship with someone that you've been working with over a number of weeks. So yeah, I was a little bit upset, but I just chalked it down to experience, and so now I ask for a deposit.
Yeah.
So at least I know, okay, you've got a bit to start with, and as I said, I try and stagger the payments. Yes, it is a risk. It's a risk that you're working with people. You know, I'm not working with large corporates who have just got, you know, loads at the end of the tax year that they just want to spend now. I'm working with people who are literally counting down to the penny of where their money's going. So what I do try and do is build in like added value into my services. So I always say to my clients that the service that I provide isn't a never-ending crutch, because at the end of the day, you need to keep as much profit in your pocket as possible. So I'll work with the organisation or the person to try and build capacity. If they need a part-time or full-time member of staff, then we look at ways that we can actually make that a goal in reality, rather than just paying consultants who probably charge more than what it would cost to have.
It's never a long-term thing, is it?
No, definitely. So.
Brilliant. The topic that we were planning to talk about today is, I'm really glad we've got to this actually, because we're quite far into the podcast, and it's sort of, I haven't been skirting around it, but it's just not come up in as much detail as I would have maybe thought it might. And it is, what are we worth? How do we know how much to charge people, how much to quote, etc., etc.? It's really, really difficult, isn't it?
It's difficult, but it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because when we go to buy something, or if we're going to purchase something or a service, when someone gives us a price, it's been a long time that I can't remember ever thinking, oh gosh, I'm not paying that. Or, oh gosh, that's way too expensive. If I go to Tesco's to do my shopping, like, I don't barter with them.
You don't haggle.
Can I give you this amount? The price is what it is. And I don't know if it's a British thing that no one likes to talk about money. Like, we don't really want to talk about how much we earn or how much it costs. Or
so actually I would really like to use this episode as an opportunity to just get some numbers out there, because I feel like even across the course of talking with lots of different freelancers on the podcast and stuff, I still have this kind of little niggle in the back of my brain that, you know, everyone else earns a lot more money than I do, and it's still like a little bit embarrassing to sort of talk very openly about numbers. So I'm just going to put it out there, because I think it's relevant to all the stuff we're going to talk about. I'm about a year into my kind of freelancing life now, having previously had a job that basically paid my bills. So my freelancing was like nice pocket money on top of that. And a year and a bit ago, I was earning a fairly decent wage for, like, I'm 33. It was like the kind of money I might expect to be earning at that sort of age. This year I went, okay, I'm not going to think about money anymore. I'm going to think about what I want to do, and I'm just going to try and earn what I need to earn to get by. I worked out, kind of with a spreadsheet with lots of moving bits, because obviously your tax is a kind of flexible thing depending on how much you earn. I reckon I needed to earn about 16 grand a year to actually just function and live. And I'm now getting towards the end of 1 year, and I will have beaten that by a clear margin, but not that much. Like, I'll have earned somewhere in the low 20s this year. And that feels quite nice. Just like, I'm just telling someone how much I earn.
But I think in your first year, I think it's not like you're I don't know, a freelance city banker or something.
This is it. It
So
does
it
depend
makes a
what you do,
difference.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what you're used to.
If
what
you're a web designer, or you're probably, you would probably maybe, depending on which contract you grab, you could earn double that for like in a few months, basically.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
yeah, but I'm not in the early 20s yet. I'm
So
still a teenager.
So you said something quite interesting to me when we were talking about making this episode, which was that actually it's kind of in your interest to keep your earnings below a tax threshold, essentially, which is really interesting.
So, I mean, it's funny, that was only a few weeks ago, and I'm already kind of like rethinking.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So what was the thinking then, and what's the thinking now?
It was because I've just done the like a workshop session around your tax returns and what expenses are allowable and not. So if you can kind of, as you said, like make a living, comfortable-ish. I don't know if anyone's living comfortable nowadays, but comfortable-ish, bills are paid, but actually I don't pay my phone bill because it's covered under my expenses, or part of my mortgage or rent is covered under because I use part of my house as my office.
Yeah, so you can get a bit of a tax deduction on that.
So in that sense, I think it can kind of work in your favour. If you can make the number, if you've got a really good accountant.
So if you can bring your surplus down towards the income tax threshold, which now is what, 12?
Is it 12?
12k? Something keeps going up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which is actually something nice
like,
the Tories have done for us.
Hey.
Someone else probably planned it before. Yeah, then that's actually in your interest, isn't it? Because then you're taking home a lot more of the money that you're
in one way,
earning.
shape or form, like in one way or another.
Yeah.
But obviously that keeps you at a certain level, and when you once you hit that, you're like, oh, actually I want to do more. Yeah. So like I said, I'm really thinking.
And you have children with mouths to feed,
exactly.
So
who are only growing up and getting bigger and wanting more things, and these things are costing more money. So one day they will go to university, and all that needs to be paid for. And
you might think, oh, I wish I had something in the bank for them. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? I've been very, very hand to mouth this year, and it is kind of, in some ways it's really liberating to just think, actually I only need 16 grand to live off. Yes, all my friends who are my sort of age are earning a hell of a lot more than that, but at the end of the day, are they much happier? No, not really. I'm absolutely fine. And then I have these little moments where I'm just kind of thinking about stuff that a lot of the people around me maybe take for granted that they can have, and how kind of if I walk into Topshop or whatever, literally every single item in there, I'm like, oh my god, this is so expensive. Like I just can't have these things. And it's not really about the next pair of shoes or anything like that.
But there is something in being able to, I'm just going to buy that.
Yeah.
I don't actually need to get my phone out and look at my banking app and see where I'm at.
Yeah, I just know I can just buy that. I have this feeling sometimes of, so I'm probably, what I've earned this year, I think is around about what they call the London living wage. So, that's great, it's living, but it is supposed to be a minimum. And it's kind of, you hear the figure 20k bandied about as a kind of average sort of earnings, which takes into account, a lot of people in sort of unskilled jobs and that kind of stuff. And I kind of think, hold on, I might be earning an average wage, that's fine, I don't need to be earning more than that, but actually what I'm doing is more than average in the skill and the effort and the energy that it demands, and some of the things that I'm taking responsibility for, and the fact that I'm basically running my own business. Like I'm not doing that because I want to be average. Like if I wanted to be average, there's a lot of other jobs I could go and get.
I think also what people kind of don't really bear in mind as much. You say, it's kind of the London, average. Your hours aren't average.
No.
So, when you're working for yourself, freelancer, entrepreneur, your hours are not average. You're not doing a 40-hour week or even a 50-hour week. Sometimes it's so much more than that. And so when you actually break down what your hourly rate is, you're like, God. Oh, yes, right, okay.
Yeah, that's the other thing, isn't it? It's the time for money kind of exchange that's going on. So this brings us back, I guess, to that whole idea of how do you quote, how do you price what you're doing? What do you have a process?
Yeah, so
that you go through?
I started just very crudely saying £25 an hour. Like, that's my minimum wage. Like, I looked at all the roles that I'd kind of done before, which had fluctuated from like £10 an hour up to £17 an hour, and then if I did overtime, and I kind of just said, okay, well, I want to be earning more than what I was when I was employed, obviously, otherwise kind of what's the point. So £25 an hour, just crude, that's my minimum.
Also, the fact that you've got all your own expenses to cover, and you know, running your business means that by the time you actually take it home, it is lower in a sense, isn't it? You're not getting holiday pay and all that stuff.
No, sick pay, children need to be picked up from school, all that stuff. Like, it cuts quite some time out. So yeah, that's how I started. And then, so I was pricing kind of jobs by the hour. How many hours do I think that's going to take me to do? And
are you a good judge of how long something will take?
How long is a piece of string, to be honest? Because you just don't know, do you? Like some projects, you can almost get it right down to the T, and then others, anything can happen. Like, throw a curveball in there, and somebody who was meant to do something hasn't done it, so now it's taking you even more time, or you've got to wait longer, and you've given this client a price based on how many hours you thought it was going to take, and it's taking you longer. So I kind of then dabbled with a project-based price, which was kind of, it was built around an hourly rate, plus other things like, have I worked with this person before? Do I like them?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking, God, is that like our unconscious bias must come into this? Well, and is that fair? I mean, it has to. We have to be allowed to,
of course,
price our services based on how badly we want the work.
Well, but if you think about it, when you go to, like, okay, let's say like way back in the day, your parents, when they go to the corner shop, sometimes they would get things like for free thrown in because they're there all the time, or they're regulars.
Loyalty bonus.
Yeah, they've got a relationship, and at the end of the day, business is about relationships. Good business means good relationships. So if I've got a relationship with a client, previous work, and they might get a bit more. They might get more for their money than somebody else who maybe just literally rang me up out of the blue or emailed me saying, "Oh, do you do this?" Different price. But I am open to negotiation. I say that like up front as well. Like, this is the price. Let me know how that sounds to you. And we can discuss.
So I would say I'm similar, and often for me it's connected with the fact that I also work, because I work a lot within the arts and within the charitable sector. My flexibility is connected to the fact that I often feel like, my price might be too high, and I might just not get that work at all if I don't have some flexibility. But that's really hard because there's a world of difference even within, say, the charity sector. There's people who literally have got £1,000 in a charity bank account, and then there's charities that are sitting on millions. So you don't really know how much someone could afford.
Well, I mean, funny you should say that. So part of the services I offer is bid writing. And so I've been doing a lot of kind of like smaller grassroots organisations. And, I try to be really fair, because obviously they're trying to get money. So do they have money to pay me first, or do I have to wait until the bid is successful?
And what if it's
the bid's not successful? Do I still get paid? So I actually started with like a no win no fee introductory, like a 3 months, no win no fee. And this was because obviously I wanted clients, I needed to build up.
So it was your way of getting started, but not a plan to continue. Because that's so risky, isn't it? And at the end of the day, it's not just to do with how good the bid is.
Exactly.
If you write a brilliant bid, but the project is rubbish, or it wasn't the right funder, then they're not going to get it.
No. But thankfully, all the bids that I wrote they all came through. So I did 3 bids in 3 months, and they all were successful. So hey, I got paid for those 3 months.
Oh wow, so that was a risk well taken.
And then obviously,
do you think those clients wouldn't have taken you on if you hadn't been able to offer them that?
Probably not. Probably not, no. Or it would have had to been like a really low price,
because you didn't have a portfolio or experience.
And not only that, because they didn't have the funds. And then I kind of feel that almost diminishes my value even more. If I say, oh well, I'll do it for £17.50.
Yeah.
Why would I do it for £17.50? kind of thing. Yeah. So I thought my strategy was no win, no fee. I wanted I wanted the portfolio, I wanted to get the referrals, I wanted to get the testimonials, and it paid off. And all of the bids that I wrote, the organisations came back for another bid.
Right, okay.
Write another bid. So it really did work.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can pay off, because I think in that instance I wasn't saying I'll write your bid for free, it doesn't matter, even if it's successful, you don't need to pay me.
Yeah.
I was quite clear that it's a lot of work, and I valued myself as much to say I think this is going to be successful.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
when it
exactly.
comes through, you pay me.
So that's sort of like a commission-based model almost, isn't it? Yes. It's interesting you say that, because I went to a seminar type event at one of the fundraising umbrella bodies a couple of years ago, and somebody asked the question about whether you could book a fundraiser on a essentially commission, like no win no fee basis, and I think it was like Institute of Fundraising or somewhere, and they were very much like no, but then their job is to represent fundraisers, and obviously in an ideal world a freelancer or whoever is doing fundraising is going to get paid for it. But I think in most spheres, if you're trying to get your first gig doing something, it can be somewhat. It can be a kind of worthwhile thing to think about. One of the things that I've enjoyed making a little bit of use of, that we had going in the Impact Hub for a while, was the Echo network.
Great.
So Echo, which is short for Economy of Hours, is a website which is run by a London-based organisation called Echo, who it's like a time banking thing basically, and that is, so in a sense, if you conduct work through Echo, you are doing work for free, but you do get something in return for it. So you can do a piece of work for somebody via Echo, and they will pay you not in cash but in Echoes, and then you can spend that on something else that's available via that website. And I think that's a really nice way to attribute value to things that are being done.
And I always say
without
as well,
cash.
That's something that I always say to kind of like I said, clients who are startups, and they're like, oh, I haven't got funding to do this. I'm like, well, you might not have financial resources, but you've got skills in other areas. You can partner up with other organisations, you can trade services and skills. So you're not, as you said, you're still valuing what you do, and you're still putting a price point on it. It's just not cash, and that's fine, because even if what did we do before we had money? We used to barter in sheep and goats and everything else.
Life went on.
There was still a value attached to things. So I think sometimes that's more important than what you're actually charging, is how much are you valuing what you do, and do your clients, or do your potential customers reflect that? Do they see
I mean,
that
right
as
now
well?
I'm just paying you in donuts alone to come be here and do this podcast. Right? I didn't think to offer like sheep or goats or
next time.
anything a bit more medieval. So the whole thing about working for free is massive in theatre, because there's tons of people who do it all the time, and there are so many unpaid opportunities.
Yes.
I read a really good blog about it recently, which was it's on the website of another podcast actually called The 98%, which I'll put a link to out. It's a podcast kind of by and for actors, and they've had a couple of episodes where they've talked about, should you work for free if you're an actor and you're trying to get more work. And there's a lot of exploitation obviously in that particular industry, but I can't remember the name of the guy who wrote the blog, but it was really just sort of talking about how the one circumstance in which maybe it's okay is if it's a completely transparent project where a group of people are coming together and everyone can see the budget, and essentially it's clear that
nobody's profiting from it, then that's not exploitation. And why shouldn't you do it if you feel that you want to? Obviously, if there's a company who are just repeatedly doing that over and over again, then there's kind of a lack of business planning going on there. But if you feel that you're on a mutual level of understanding with the person that you're working with, then you shouldn't feel like, oh God, I mustn't do this. It's absolutely terrible practice. Because I do think that sometimes we get this kind of messaging, don't we?
I know
that says, don't do it, never ever do it.
I mean, it's different if, say, like you said, if it's very transparent and it's all out there. But let's say you decided, you're going to give your acting skills for free, but actually there's ticketing and the costs.
Yeah, that's it.
There's profit being made, and why is it not being distributed back? So my friend, he's a actor by trade anyway, but he does singing and dancing as well. He's got this on his WhatsApp, and it's a picture, and it says, "I am an artist. This does not mean I will work for free. I have bills just like you. Thank you for understanding."
Yeah, totally. This is it, isn't it? That's why I wanted to call this episode "What Am I Worth?" Because it's tied, what you charge and whether you're willing to work for free and when you're willing to work for free is totally tied up with your self-worth as well, isn't it?
It's because you don't want to come across like, I don't want people to think that I think I'm, so much better than them, or, that I'm. But no, actually, I know you should know that within your field or within your industry, within your specialism, that this is what I'm worth. And there's nothing wrong in that. I really don't. I saw Tiffany and Co. are selling a paperclip made of silver for $165.
Oh my god!
It's a paperclip. I was looking at it. I was like, is it like a big paperclip?
So you see something like that, and then you're like, well, I should be charging at least that per hour, because I wouldn't expect to have to spend more than an hour's wages on a paperclip.
But that's why it's important to know your market. Knowing your market is just as important as knowing your worth at the end of the day. And Tiffany and Co are not marketing that paperclip to me because
you ain't gonna buy it. You're not stupid.
But then you've got luxury goods, you've got luxury services, and you do find that when you put your price point at a certain level, it does attract. I was speaking to my sister about it. So my sister does beautiful handmade luxury bespoke, I wouldn't say wedding invitations, but event invitations. And
do you want to give her a little plug?
Oh, can I?
For our rich listeners.
Leonie Gordon, London. Please go and check her out. And they are beautiful, actually, really, really beautiful. And, I'll say that her collection, that you just go onto the website and you just press, yes, I'll have 30 of those. She's not selling that for any less than about, I think it was like £700 or something like that. Yeah. And she's just like,
she knows her market.
I know where I'm going, and I know, she says, I don't mean to sound bad, but I know who I don't want to work with, and I know, the types of customers that I don't want, the ones who are going to be kind of like scrabbling around and taking that off and, add that, no, but I don't want that. She's like, no, I want the ones who come with their PA, and their PA just says like, take those, I'll have those.
So this is really interesting. One of the things that I am going to try and do for 2019, and hopefully I'll be well on the way to this goal by the time this podcast goes out, is that I'm going to try and branch out with some of my more transferable skills into a different market, which pays more, basically. So I am thinking about going into copywriting, because I have always done copywriting as part of all the other work that I've done, because I've just been managing projects and there's no one else to do it, and I really enjoy it. And I've also done a bit of blogging, I've done script writing, I write audio description, and I quite often get compliments on my use of the written word, and I just really, really enjoy it. So I've been kind of looking around at ways that I could make that skill a little bit more lucrative, because unfortunately if I only do it within theatre and charitable arts, it doesn't pay very much. What's been really interesting is I found a couple of websites that have actually got kind of really transparent details on there of like the average day rates for different types of work that freelancers are getting through them. So there's a couple of ones that I found. One was called Juno, and another one's called Contently, and I'm just sort of starting to have a little poke around at those now. But you know, I think there are a lot of resources out there now to point people in kind of the right direction.
I do also think, like, as much as it's a great thing, you know, websites like People Per Hour and Fiverr, like, it almost kind of like brings it all down a bit again.
Well, I've used some of those websites before, and I've gone there specific. Well, no, as a client, I've gone there to get something for a project I'm managing, and I haven't had to pay a lot for it. So most of those kinds of websites, I'm very cautious of.
But what was this? What did you get? What you wanted?
I did. Yeah, I've got what I wanted, and I've got it at a really good price. But it hasn't made me think, oh, I should go on there as a freelancer, because I haven't thought I'm going to get paid much.
Exactly.
So I think it's, you know, about finding the right ones. But if you're looking at ones which are, so Juno, for example, they actually, not only do they publish their average rates for different types of work, so I could see, for example, that if I did copywriting for them, I could probably pitch myself at like twice what I would earn doing it in a small theatre organisation. But not only do they do that, they also actually pay you. So you're not waiting for the client to pay. You just say what you've done, and you're paid by the. It's essentially an agency which pays you, and so that's been quite highly recommended to me as one to look at. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different ones out there, and some are probably better than others.
Yeah, I just think, you know, things like, it's all great if you want a service and you want it quickly and you want to pay less for it, but then I do think, imagine if I was going to do this piece of research for a client, they could just go to, I don't know, Sally over there.
So they're undercutting you if they're doing it super cheap, aren't they? Yeah, and kind of themselves maybe being a little exploited, but it depends on the different markets, doesn't it?
And where they are. And
yeah, I mean, what I paid when I used that website, that was all the money I had. So, like, that's what there was.
That's all there is.
Yeah, really, really difficult. Oh, I was just going to say about the different types of work that I get, and like the actual range of fees that I in reality charge.
Yeah.
Is it what's that like for you? Do you have a range of different fees that you end up going out for?
Yeah. So, as I said, if someone literally just comes to me and said, you know, I just need to, you know, okay, yeah, we get a free initial consultation. Okay, I want to meet for an hour. Okay, it's a minimum of 25. Like that is £25. That's it.
So you will charge for that?
I would charge
meeting,
for that. Yeah,
which is good.
And then, for example, if I'm doing if I'm writing a bid for a client, I wouldn't charge for a meeting, because I probably should, actually, because it's additional time that I haven't built in for actually writing the bid. But again, it's that thing of, I don't want to add too much. But I wouldn't charge for, like, if I had like a catch up meeting with them or something else that they.
So do you ever go back and work out what you've actually earned per hour?
No. Well, no, I do. I do. And yeah, this is why I tend to I try not to do an hourly charge. I try just to do it project based.
Too depressing to go back in the house. That's what I find.
Yeah,
far too depressing.
I do hourly when I deliver training.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my training.
But that's that's not going to run to an extra day, don't you?
I really hope not.
So much to learn.
So that is one area where I will always do, but I don't charge my prep time.
Yeah,
and that's kind of bad. But
so we're all just really inconsistent in all this stuff, aren't we? So I have a kind of a rough amount that I'm trying to charge per day, which is creeping up and up and up, because throughout this year I've been realizing that, you know, I do just need to charge more, basically, in order to earn what I would like to earn. But then also that really only applies to work where I'm being approached and asked to quote for it.
Yes.
Whereas I get other work, so that would be more like if I'm doing audio description work or sort of workshop leading, that kind of stuff. But then I also do other work. I do a lot of work which is just based on a day rate with a theatre company, maybe supporting a project. And realistically, some of the companies that I'm working with, even some quite high profile companies, they'll basically pay me like an equity actor's rate. I'm not there as an actor, but I'm
Yeah.
there as a kind of supporting artist, and there's not really a rate for it. So they will just look to the unions who have set like a day rate, and you know, you're talking like it's less than 120 quid a day.
My husband used to he was doing Thriller Live.
Oh wow.
And it sounds great. Like, it sounds amazing. And I said to him, if you were a single man with no family, I said you'd be living it up with the amount of shows that you do per week.
Oh,
it would
but
be
it's
great.
every evening, isn't it? And every weekend, and it's like 100 quid a day, if that.
Well, yeah, per show, isn't it? So sometimes they do 2 shows and a matinee and all that stuff. But what he was saying is that a lot of the he was like one of the oldest cast members, and said they're young, like it's almost like they're fresh out of drama school, and like it's just a chance for them to get on stage, be seen, and they lap it up.
But then it turns out that is like the pinnacle of what you can earn in that industry, unless you get into like film or something.
So you become a big star, and then you can command your own.
So like obviously I am a fan of unions and the fact that there are union rates, but I do think that there are, certainly within my industry, that's become like people just go, oh well, that's what, you know, when they're writing their budget, they go, what do we have to pay? We just pay that minimum. So then that's kind of, unless that keeps on going up and up and up, that's kind of driving down the actual standard of living that you can get off of that. And you know, and I sometimes do work where, you know, that would be a pipe dream. Like I did a job this week which was such a nice job, but like it was basically less than an equity minimum, and I sort of did it because I'm hoping it will lead to something else. And
that's another thing. That is another thing why sometimes we take pieces of work that you probably wouldn't normally. Well, not that you wouldn't normally, but if it was your friend or a colleague that was saying, "Oh, what do you think about this?" You'd be like, "No, why would you do that?" But because you said the contacts, the networks, you just never know the opportunities that might come out of it.
And at the end of the day, I enjoyed it. I had a lovely 2 days. It wasn't well paid, but I had a really nice time, and I don't really want to feel guilty about that.
Can you
know,
imagine?
just loved it.
You went to work like you're an employee. Like, I didn't get paid much, but I love my job. Like, I had a lovely time today, so I just went in.
It's not normal, is it? So, you know.
But that's the thing about entrepreneurs, that we do what we love.
Yeah, exactly.
So sometimes you do kind of feel, oh well, never mind. You know.
Well, and if I can land my, you know, future copywriting job. So my plan with this whole copywriting thing that I'm going to branch out into, the plan is, like, if I can find some work in that field that is, you know, £300 a day or more, then I do that a couple of days a month. And then that is what allows me to go and spend a couple of days, you know, earning a third of that for sitting in a room watching someone pretend to be a dog, which was what I was doing for 2 days this week. It was brilliant. Well, like literally analysing the art of how to pretend to be a dog.
I quoted somebody a day rate of, it was like £330 or something. And then we'll get back to you next week. And then they didn't get back to me. But I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel bad that I had set that. It was almost, in a weird way, like a pressure off.
Yeah, you test the water with that now and again. I've done that recently as well. I've had someone ask me for a quote for something where I've looked at it and gone, oh, that's going to be quite hard work. Not entirely sure if I want to do that. I feel like maybe this client can afford it, so I'm going to quote quite high because it would be worth my while. It would be worth the work if they would pay that. Never got any more back. But one time that might pay off.
Well, I'm still hopeful. I think they're going to come back to me in the new year. I'm praying it through. They'll come back. So.
Yeah. We will see. We will see. Fingers crossed.
I think something is, I mean, I don't know, but I know that you're married. And sometimes I get this, it's projection. I think, do people just think I'm doing this as like a hobby because my husband?
Oh, that's so interesting.
I've got a husband at home, and he, it's not like I am really working. I'm really doing it because I want to be successful, and I, want to be able to command.
That's really interesting, isn't it?
But sometimes I do think that. Do people just think that? Oh, she's just one of those.
So my kind of going properly freelance pretty much coincided with after I got married, and I did have one or two people say to me, oh, you're just a kept woman now, are you? And I was like, no, That's not it at all. The truth of it is, I've gotten my mortgage, I've paid for my wedding, I no longer have the incentive that I previously had to do this job that I'm not really enjoying. But I'm still, I'm still earning enough to pay my way.
Exactly. I still pay bills, like,
Yeah, absolutely.
gas, electric, it still gets all paid.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes I think that as well. And then I think, oh, don't be stupid.
Yeah, I think there's some judgment sometimes
a little bit
around what's going on. But I think that's why it's really good to be able to be quite transparent about stuff and say, look, yeah, I've only earned X amount, but actually, here's my spreadsheet. Here's how I survived on that.
Just carry it around.
I just didn't have, 3 Starbucks coffees every day.
Well, this is it.
Because life is...
It's a lot more than that. Like, there's some things that, like, oh God, like, obviously kids just make you hemorrhage money all the time. But, I like to be able to go in and think, oh, well, so-and-so, they'd like that, or they'd like that. I couldn't do that for a while. I had to be really frugal and be like, no, I'm going to wait until that coat doesn't fit you anymore before I get another one. But slowly, I'm getting to the place where I can go and buy. And it's my nephew's first birthday party at the weekend, and they've got to have they're all superhero themed, so I've got to go and buy some superhero outfits. And I'm in a position where I can go and do that now.
But actually, it's useful to have gone through that kind of time of just changing your habits a little bit, so as to sort of your default is, I'm not going to spend money on these things that I don't need. And then I think when you do get into a slightly better position again, you still probably don't buy as many things as you would have done, because you've realised how little you need, really, what you can get by on. I still
like the reduced shelves in the supermarkets.
The yellow sticker shelf.
Great stuff in there.
So that's probably a good place to meet other freelancers, isn't it? Like, hanging around in front of the yellow sticker shelf.
You must be a freelancer.
Yeah, love it. So this is a final section from the ridiculous to the sublime, and we're talking about, firstly, the most ridiculous or annoying things that have happened to us this week as freelancers. So mine is kind of connected with the whole question of what we are worth, and I don't know why I did this, but I had some time, I was on a train journey, and I didn't have a book, and I was like, oh, I don't really want to work, so I kind of just started scrolling around on my phone, and I'd got some sort of email or something that was telling me how much money I could make through doing online surveys. And I was like, great, I can do that on my train journey. Might make some money. That could be my new freelancing career. And I feel like sometimes I see things like this advertised and I totally fall for it. I'm like, great, easy money, easy money. So I ended up giving my details to like quite a few of these websites which were promising to send me loads of surveys and things like market research and focus group invites and that kind of thing. One or two of them looked really good and had really good reviews, but I've literally had nothing actually from them except just poured loads of my information into them. And one of them was like, come and do these online surveys, we'll pay you for your time. And do you know what it was? You would start clicking through, and a lot of the time you'd get quite a long way in, and then it would say, oh, sorry, you're not suitable for this survey because you don't live in Birmingham and have 3 cats or whatever. And then one or two of them I actually managed to complete, and it said, congratulations, you've earned 12p.
Wow.
And they literally pay you, so they don't even pay you the money, but it goes into your account balance. Then I think you have to earn a certain amount before it will pay out, but they literally pay you in pennies. Like it's less than a pound, the amount you can earn for like a few minutes of work. So maybe if you added it up, it might be like minimum wage or something. Because if you did it for a whole hour,
I was going to say you'd have to do like doing that as your 9 to 5.
But I was just looking at it, and I was like, I can't believe I thought this would be
lucrative,
even a vaguely good idea. I just had a few spare hours. I thought I maybe would do it. I'm sure I wouldn't have done that if I had a 9 to 5 job. But yeah, so don't do it. That's my top tip.
Funnily you say that. Someone sent me a link for a YouGov poll. And I think you get paid for that. And that's obviously real. And
I mean, it's a real poll, but is it real money, though?
I started to put my details in, and then I think I got to where you got, like, afterwards.
And it's 12p.
Yeah, it started asking me all these questions, like, married or single? And I just thought, I don't want to tell anybody this information, actually.
Could I make it up?
So I could have done that.
Oh, but I think they then come and test you again. I was noticing the ones I was doing, you get asked the same question multiple times. And I think it's because they're trying to make sure that you're not just flinging in any old information to get your 12p.
Well, I've got something really boring. It's probably nowhere near as exciting, but it was online and I was trying to register or do something with my unique tax reference thing.
Oh yeah.
And it would. So I kept filling out all of this information, and I kept getting the government. What's it called? Government gateway
yeah.
ID, and then it kept asking me to log back in, and I'm logging back in, and it just wasn't working. It kept saying it's not recognised, not recognised, not recognised, and I needed this reference to put onto another form so I could apply for something else. And I kept going away and coming back, going away, coming back. So I must have about 15 government whatever gateway IDs. And do you know what it was?
15 different ones?
Do you know what it was?
Why have you got 15?
Because I kept re-registering.
Don't they have to post it to you each time?
So they give you like an ID that you can log in online.
Right, okay.
And then once you've submitted, then they post it out to you. So I just kept re-registering online, registering. I'm thinking there's something wrong with this. Like I was thinking, do I call them up because this is not? And what it was so tired. You know, you do things at like 3:30 a.m.
Yeah.
And like you're just not concentrating. I kept putting, this is really silly. I always read the small print. Everybody. I kept putting in my email address and password. I didn't want my email address. I wanted the government gateway ID and my password.
Oh, and you could have saved yourself
like
much time.
At least 40 minutes.
Oh
God, sleep I could have done. But that's why it's probably not a good idea to be working. Like,
it's quite hard to
be
accurate, isn't it, when you're that tired?
And
also sometimes when you're working on your own, you can't see what's wrong with something. Like you just make mistakes, don't you?
So I'm just thinking. It must be my email address and password because that's what they asked me for originally. So then it says, now enter your. I'm thinking, just the same information again. No.
Yeah. Oh, we've all been there. That's very familiar and very annoying.
Yes.
Let's end on a happier note.
Yay.
Let's talk about the best things that have happened to us or that we've done this week for being freelancers. Mine is actually, I'm going to talk about a couple of other podcasts that I've been listening to because listening to them is kind of one of the things that made me want to start this one, and I haven't really mentioned them at all yet, but I've just gotten to the end of one of the ones that I've been really enjoying, which is the 98%, which I mentioned earlier. So this is a podcast by and for actors, but they are focused on this statistic. Well, inspired by the statistic which came out a few years ago, which was issued by Casting Call Pro, which is, I think that's the old name for what's now Spotlight, which is like the actors' online profile site. And they did a survey and found that 98% of their members were earning less than 20 grand, which was maybe surprising because the actors that we see, obviously in the public eye, are earning way more than that. So 98% is a really lovely podcast. It's got two great presenters on it. One of them's got a lovely Welsh soothing accent, very nice to listen to, and they do a really funny little kind of jingle at the start of each episode, which is their kind of outlet for doing some performing, because they are actors who are, for the most part, not working as actors, but they talk about that loads, and there's loads of transferable stuff, I think, just to kind of other freelance jobs actually, but it's just super entertaining because they're very entertaining people. So I finished series 1 of that this week and I was a little bit sad because I've been really enjoying it. And there's another one that I've been listening to called Starving Artist, which is a bit of an older podcast, and it's by an Australian woman called Honor Eastley, and her whole premise was to set out and meet artists and find out how they make a living from what they do. So again, that's like something that I've kind of wanted to do a little bit as part of this, although it's not limited to the arts, but it's really nice. She's got a very, very nice voice to listen to as well, and she just talks to lots of really interesting people, and I think these kind of things are really nice because they're just kind of helping us all to share and feel more of a community actually as freelancers.
And you don't feel like you're the odd one out. Well, like when you're on the outside, everybody else is living this fantastic freelance life, and you're here just barely scraping by from day to day.
Yeah, it gets you over that feeling, which is exactly where we started actually on the first episode, talking about imposter syndrome. So Yeah, so that's been my sublime little thing for this week. Have you got anything good?
This week, I would say knowing that I can go to my children's school play.
Of
I
course.
don't have to.
Because we are recording this just before Christmas, so there's all lots of nativities going on.
And I don't have to kind of oh, can I have half a day off here or half? I can just go.
Yeah.
So that's lovely.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to other conversations where, especially if they work in schools, teachers, if you're a teacher and you're a parent, you can't take time off to go and see your child.
No, of course, because you've got to do your own school play.
So I'm hearing a lot of things about teachers nowadays who kind of complain about that. But yeah, I can just be like, hey, I'm not working this afternoon. And that's it.
Hooray. Were your kids very cute in the play?
Yes, I just saw the choir, which was wonderful. And the middle child has got activities. It's so 2018. It's based on The Apprentice. So I'm looking forward to seeing this one.
Is he playing Alan Sugar?
No, it's my daughter, and she's the narrator actually. I'm
trying to think what the narrator sounds like on The Apprentice.
Oh, no, I don't know.
Is it like a Geordie?
I can't remember. No, that's Big Brother. That's got to be Big Brother.
Wow, that sounds very untraditional. I have a little niece who has just done her first nativity because she's just started school, and she was a chick, which I thought was a bit more Eastery than Christmassy, but it's still not as out there as The Apprentice.
Yeah, I want to see I want to see how they've woven the nativity Christmas story into The Apprentice. Because not Jesus. Sorry, Joseph. He was a carpenter, so maybe it's that kind of apprentice as opposed to Alan Sugar Apprentice. I'm not even sure.
Yeah, he had a trade. Well, maybe Joseph might have been an entrepreneur, mightn't he? I wonder if he was a freelance carpenter.
He was. That's why he didn't pay taxes.
And I wonder how much he charged and what they paid him in.
He got paid in babies.
He got paid in being the sort of nominal father of the Son of God, so I guess that's reasonable pay.
I mean,
most of us can't hope for such a thing.
So
amazing. That's a lovely note to finish on. Thank you so much, Rachel. It's been lovely.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Let's say goodbye. Bye. You've been listening to Properly Freelance with Jenni Elborn. My theme music is by Sarah Weiler, and the podcast is supported by Impact Hub Brixton. If you'd like to get in touch, that would be really lovely. My Twitter handle is properfreelance, and my Gmail is properlyfreelance@gmail.com.